My name is Natalie Harper. I'm 34, a pediatric nurse in Columbus, Ohio. When my mother-in-law begged to throw my daughter's 7th birthday party, I thought maybe she had finally changed. Then the cake came out. Pink frosting, gold candles, and written across the top was another little girl's name. Happy birthday, Sophie. My daughter, Emma, looked up at me and whispered, "Mom, did Grandma forget who this party was for?" I wish that had been the worst part. It wasn't. By the end of that party, I learned exactly why my mother-in-law had never loved my daughter. And by midnight, she wished she had never ordered that cake. Carol called 3 weeks before Emma's birthday. Too sweet, too cheerful, too unlike herself. "I want to throw Emma's party this year," she said. I nearly dropped my coffee. Carol had forgotten Emma's birthday twice. Now she wanted balloons, cake, guests, everything. My husband, Ryan, smiled like a little boy. "Maybe Mom's trying." I wanted to believe that, so I said yes. That was my first mistake. Carol asked for Emma's favorite colors, purple and silver. She asked her favorite cake, strawberry. She asked her favorite animal, foxes. I was touched. Then she texted the invitation mock-up. Pink butterflies, gold crowns, no foxes. At the bottom, it said, "A princess party for our special girl." Not Emma, just our special girl. I stared at it longer than I should have. Something felt off. A week before the party, Carol dropped off decorations, balloons, napkins, gift bags, everything pink. Emma opened one bag and frowned. "Mommy, why does this say Sophie?" I looked. A small sticker on the bottom read, "Sophie's 7th. Carol laughed too quickly. "Oh, silly warehouse mistake." But the sticker wasn't printed by a warehouse. It was handwritten, in Carol's handwriting. I showed Ryan. He rubbed his forehead. "Nat, Mom helps with Sophie's parties too. She probably mixed things up." Sophie was Ryan's niece, his sister Melissa's daughter, Carol's favorite grandchild. Everyone knew it. Even Emma knew it. I said, "This is Emma's birthday." Ryan sighed. "Please don't start before the party even happens." There it was. My warning. I wasn't allowed to notice. That night, Emma sat on my bed holding a purple fox plushie. "Mom? Yes, baby? Does Grandma like Sophie better because Sophie looks like Daddy's family?" My chest tightened. "Why would you ask that?" Emma shrugged. "She said Sophie has Harper eyes." I went still. "And what did she say about you?" Emma looked down. "She said I have your eyes." Like that explained everything. The party was at Carol's house. White porch, perfect lawn, American flag by the driveway. The kind of house where every room looked staged and nobody felt comfortable. When we arrived, Emma squeezed my hand. "Do I look okay?" She wore a purple dress with tiny silver stars. I kissed her hair. "You look exactly like yourself." Carol opened the door, looked at Emma, then said, "Oh, you wore purple." Not hello, not happy birthday, just disappointment. Inside, Carol had made a photo wall. Gold letters, family memories, guests loved it. Then I looked closer. 23 photos. Sophie in 10, Ryan in 6, Melissa in 4, Emma in 1, and in Emma's only photo, Sophie was standing in front of her, half blocking her face. Ryan saw me looking, then looked away. Micro twist number 1. He had noticed before I did. The gift table had 2 piles. One small pile with Emma's name, one huge pile with no name at all. I asked Carol, "Whose gifts are those?" She smiled. "Oh, just extras." Then Sophie ran in wearing a gold crown. Carol clapped. "There's my birthday princess." The room went quiet. Emma heard it. So did I. Carol corrected herself fast. "I mean party princess?" Too late. If you've ever watched a child realize they were being treated second best, comment "I saw it" below. Melissa arrived 20 minutes late. Perfect hair, designer bag. Sophie beside her in a pink tulle dress. Not guest clothes, birthday girl clothes. Emma looked at Sophie, then at herself. Purple stars versus pink princess. Sophie whispered, "Grandma said I should dress special." Emma whispered back, "But it's my birthday." Sophie looked confused. That was when I realized something worse. Sophie didn't know either. Carol dimmed the lights. Everyone gathered. Ryan lifted his phone to record. Emma smiled nervously. Then Carol carried in the cake. 2 tiers, pink frosting, gold candles, a crown on top, and across the front, in perfect white icing, "Happy birthday, Sophie." Emma's smile disappeared. The room froze. Carol gasped. Fake. Ryan stopped recording, and my daughter whispered, "Mom, did Grandma forget who this party was for?" I looked at Carol. She wasn't embarrassed. She was waiting. Carol pressed a hand to her chest. "Oh my goodness. Too dramatic. Too fast. The bakery must have made a mistake." Nobody moved. Emma stood frozen beside me. I looked at the cake, then at Carol. "Really?" She nodded. Too hard, too rehearsed. Then Sophie quietly said, "But Grandma checked the cake yesterday." Silence. Carol's smile twitched. And just like that, the first lie cracked. Melissa grabbed Sophie's shoulder. Too quickly. "Sophie, sweetheart, let's not confuse people." Confuse people? I crouched beside Emma. Sophie kept talking. "Grandma said this was my surprise." Melissa snapped. "Sophie." Too sharp. Too panicked. Emma looked at me. Ryan looked at his sister. No one breathed. Because children tell truth before adults organize lies. And Sophie had just done exactly that. I looked at Ryan. "Say something." He rubbed his jaw. "Let's not do this in front of everyone." There it was. Again. Not. "Mom, explain." Not. "Emma deserves better. Just don't make this public." Carol suddenly found confidence. "Exactly. Interesting. So humiliation was fine when my daughter suffered it. But truth? Truth needed privacy." I felt something inside me harden. That was the worst part. Emma smiled. Small. Brave. The kind of smile children make when protecting adults. "It's okay," she whispered. Not because it was okay. Because she thought making herself smaller would help. That broke me more than the cake. Then Carol said, "We can scrape the name off." Scrape. Like my daughter's identity was frosting. I stood up slowly. "No." Melissa suddenly clapped. "Good thing we brought cupcakes." Interesting. Very interesting. Because who brings backup birthday desserts unless they expected a problem? Carol and Melissa exchanged a look. Tiny. Fast. But I saw it. So did Ryan. And he immediately looked away. Micro twist. He knew more than he was admitting. Ryan's Aunt Denise leaned toward me. Quiet voice. "Sweetheart." I turned. She looked uncomfortable. Carol's been acting strange for months. Months. Not days. Months. "What does that mean?" Denise hesitated. Then, "She keeps saying family truths always come out." My stomach tightened. That wasn't about cake. That was about something bigger. Emma wandered toward the gift table, then came back holding a tiny silver bracelet. Pink charm. Letter S engraved. Not ES. I looked at Carol. She didn't even flinch. Emma asked softly, "Was this for Sophie too?" Carol smiled tightly. "Another mix-up. How many mix-ups does one party need? At some point, accidents become planning." I stepped into the kitchen for water, then heard voices. "Carol. Melissa." Sharp whispers. "Melissa. I told you this was too early." Carol. "She needed to see it." I froze. Needed to see what? Melissa again. "Ryan doesn't even know everything." Everything? My pulse kicked hard, because suddenly, this wasn't about favoritism anymore. Sophie ran into the kitchen holding a drawing. Grandma, look. Stick figures. Carol, Melissa, Ryan, Sophie. Then one figure crossed out in red crayon. I stared. Who's that? Sophie answered casually. Emma. Melissa snatched the paper. Too late. I had already seen it. And worse. So had Ryan. While everyone pretended normal, Emma found Carol's phone on the counter. Mom? I looked down. On the screen. A lock screen photo. Carol holding Sophie. Caption. My only true princess. My blood went cold. Emma read it aloud. The room went silent. And for the first time that day, Carol looked genuinely nervous. No one moved. Emma still held Carol's phone. The words sat there. My only true princess. Ryan stepped forward. Mom. Carol grabbed the phone too fast. It's nothing. Nothing? Emma looked at me. Am I not a real princess? That question hit harder than the cake, harder than the bracelet, harder than every fake apology, because now my daughter was asking if she belonged, and someone was going to answer. Melissa exhaled sharply. Carol. Warning in her voice. Real warning. Carol snapped. Not now. Interesting. Melissa looked uncomfortable. Not smug anymore. Not confident. Scared. That changed the room. Because scared people know things. I looked at her. What's going on? She shook her head. Too fast. But Sophie whispered. Grandma says secrets make surprises better. That landed like glass breaking. I turned to Ryan. Do you know what this is? Pause. Too long. Then. No. Lie. I knew that face. Hospital parents make that face before bad news. Half-truth. Fear. Calculation. Emma grabbed my hand tighter. I asked quietly. Ryan. What do you know? He swallowed. Not here. There it was again. Always later. Always private. Because public truth makes weak people panic. Aunt Denise stepped forward. Enough hesitation. Carol thinks Emma isn't Ryan's. Silence. Absolute silence. Ryan closed his eyes. Melissa whispered. Denise. Too late. Emma looked up at me, confused. I felt heat rise through my chest. Carol crossed her arms. Not ashamed. Defensive. Like she'd been waiting for this. That was twist number 1 of the real story. This had never been about birthdays. Carol lifted her chin. There were questions. Questions? I laughed, coldly. What questions? She looked at Ryan, then at me. You and Ryan were separated. True, briefly. Years ago. After Emma was conceived. Not before. Ryan finally spoke. Mom. Too weak. Too late. Carol continued. Timelines matter. There it was. The accusation. Wrapped in fake concern. Emma stood between us holding a fox plushie. Too young for adult cruelty. Am I Daddy's kid? Emma asked it softly. So softly. But the room heard every word. Ryan dropped to his knees instantly. Baby. Emma stepped backward. That hurt him. Good. Because he should have stopped this earlier. Carol muttered. She deserves truth. I turned so fast my heels scraped hardwood. Truth? My voice came out ice cold. Or your fantasy? Even Carol flinched. Slightly. Ryan stood slowly, face pale. I looked at him. When did you know? Long silence. Then, 6 months ago? The room exploded. Not literally, emotionally. 6 months? He knew? Emma looked between us, confused. Melissa covered her mouth. And suddenly betrayal changed shape. Because my enemy wasn't just Carol anymore. My husband had known. Mom brought it up, Ryan said quickly. She found old dates. Old dates? She thought, did you think it? Silence. That was answer enough. I stepped back. Actually stepped back. Because suddenly my marriage shifted under my feet. Ryan whispered, no. Weak. Unconvincing. Then Sophie said, Grandma said Emma doesn't have Harper eyes. Children. Always truth. Carol smiled strangely, then walked to her desk drawer. pulled out a manila envelope. My stomach dropped. Since we're being honest, no. No way. She handed papers to Ryan. He looked sick. Then I saw the logo. DNA Testing Company. Emma gasped. I went cold. Because this woman had planned this. From the start. The party. The cake. Everything. Ryan looked shattered. Mom. Carol spoke clearly. I tested Ryan. The room froze. What? She folded her arms. Secretly. Gasps. Even Melissa looked horrified. Carol pointed toward Emma. If she wants to call herself family? Pause. Then. Let's prove it. If someone ever used your kindness or your child for cruelty, comment, never again. And that's when I smiled. Because Carol had no idea what was coming. I looked at Carol, then at the DNA envelope, then laughed. Not because it was funny, because cruel people always think they're the smartest person in the room. Go ahead, I said. Carol blinked. She expected panic, not calm. Ryan stared at me. Natalie. But I was already reaching into my purse, because unlike Carol, I came prepared. I pulled out my own envelope. White. Thin. Very official. Carol frowned. What's that? I smiled. Truth. Ryan went still. Melissa looked confused. Denise actually leaned forward. Carol folded her arms. Still smug. Still certain. That confidence was about to die. 3 weeks ago, I said, after Emma asked why Grandma never loved her. My voice stayed steady. I ordered a DNA test. Gasps. Ryan stared at me. You what? I looked at him. Because your mother had already poisoned my child. Carol smirked. Too early. Way too early. Because she thought my test would help her. That was adorable. I handed Ryan the paper. His hands shook. He read. Then looked up at me like he'd forgotten how breathing worked. Emma is mine. Silence. Carol's face changed. Fast. No. Ryan read again. 99.9999%. Emma clapped softly. Daddy's mine. That almost broke me, because she shouldn't have needed proof. But now she had it. And Carol had lost her favorite weapon. Or so she thought. And then, Carol smiled. Actually smiled. Wrong reaction. Dangerous reaction. She tilted her head. That proves Ryan. Pause. Then. Not you. The room froze. I felt my pulse drop. Melissa whispered, Oh my God. Ryan looked horrified. Emma frowned. Carol crossed her arms. And there it was. The deeper twist. Carol stepped closer. Emma doesn't look like you either. Insane. Absolutely insane. But she believed it. Blonde hair? Green eyes? Where from? Ryan snapped. Mom! But Carol was fully committed now. The kind of person who burns the house down to avoid losing. Emma looked scared. I crouched beside her and kissed her forehead. Because this part? I had expected too. I stood slowly. Funny thing about being a pediatric nurse. Carol blinked. I continued. I know how hospital records work. Melissa whispered. No. Good. Someone was catching up. I smiled at Carol. Do you remember St. Catherine's? Her face shifted. Just slightly. That told me enough. Because now, we were finally at the real story. Melissa burst first. Mom, stop. Carol snapped. Stay out of this. Melissa shook her head. Crying now. This was supposed to stay buried? Ryan turned. What? Nobody breathed. Melissa looked at me, then Emma, then finally said, The hospital made a mistake. Boom. Room silent. My blood went cold. Because I had known. But hearing it out loud? Different. Ryan stared. What mistake? Melissa cried harder. The babies. No one moved. Then. They mixed them. Emma grabbed my leg. Ryan looked sick. Carol whispered. No. Melissa kept going. Your mother found out years ago. That landed like an explosion. Ryan turned toward Carol. Slowly. Terrifyingly slowly. Years? Carol said nothing. That was answer enough. Ryan's voice came out shaking. You knew? Carol whispered. She wasn't ours. Melissa sobbed. You tried to keep Sophie closer because Emma was switched. I couldn't breathe. Emma looked up at me, confused, small, terrified. Carol finally shouted, I was protecting my real family. And that's when Ryan looked at his mother, like she had become a stranger. Ryan stared at his mother, like he didn't recognize her. You knew? Carol's lips trembled, but not with guilt, with frustration, like she was tired of being misunderstood. I protected this family. Ryan laughed once, cold, broken. You tortured a child. Emma squeezed my hand tighter, and for the first time all day, Carol had no answer. Then Emma asked the question. Soft, tiny, devastating. Mom, am I yours? Everything inside me shattered. I dropped to my knees immediately, held her face. Emma. My voice cracked. You are my daughter. She whispered. Even if the hospital messed up? I kissed her forehead. Especially then. Across the room, even Denise started crying. Carol shook her head. You don't understand. Wrong sentence. Always the wrong sentence. Melissa snapped. No, you don't understand. Everyone turned. Melissa wiped tears. Sophie was never yours to replace Emma with, Carol shouted. She was my real granddaughter. Ryan stepped forward. No. Quiet. Deadly quiet. Emma is my daughter. That sentence changed everything, because blood had just lost. Publicly. I looked at Carol. One question. She glared. Did you ever tell us? Silence. Melissa answered instead. No. Ryan turned slowly. What? Melissa whispered. She found out 4 years ago. 4 years. Emma was 3. My knees nearly gave out. Ryan looked physically sick. Carol whispered. I was trying to fix it. Fix. That word. Like children were accounting errors. Then Melissa exploded. Actually exploded. You poisoned both girls. Everyone froze. She pointed at Carol. Sophie grew up thinking she had to compete. Then toward Emma. And Emma grew up wondering why she wasn't enough. Carol tried. I was protecting family. Melissa screamed, You destroyed family! That landed harder than anything I said, because daughters know exactly where to strike. Ryan looked at me, then at Melissa, then asked, Where's Sophie's file? Melissa whispered, I brought it. Gasps. Of course she did. Envelope, drawer, paper shaking. Ryan read, then looked at Sophie, then Emma, then me, and whispered, Oh my God. Because Sophie was biologically ours, and Emma was biologically Melissa's. The room actually stopped breathing. Carol staggered backward. No, Melissa cried. Yes. Ryan sat down hard. Sophie looked confused. Emma held my hand tighter. I looked at Carol. Your favorite granddaughter. Pause. She was mine. Carol physically collapsed into a chair. Because suddenly, her entire cruelty became monstrous. She hadn't rejected someone else's child. She had rejected her own biological granddaughter. By midnight, police weren't there. Lawyers weren't there. But consequences had arrived anyway. Ryan told Carol to leave, immediately. Melissa left sobbing with Sophie. Denise stayed with us. Emma fell asleep in my lap, clutching her fox. The ruined cake sat untouched. Pink frosting. Wrong name. A monument to cruelty. And Carol? Alone. Exactly where she belonged. 6 months later. Therapy. Family mediation. Hospital investigations reopened. DNA confirmations completed. Messy. Painful. Complicated. But one thing became simple. Emma was still mine. Sophie was still Melissa's. Biology mattered legally. Love mattered emotionally. Ryan never spoke to Carol again. Not after what she did. Not after what she stole. C. TA3. If this story reminded you that real family is built by love, not cruelty, like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs that reminder. One night, Emma asked, "Mom? Yeah? If I was switched?" Pause. "Why do I still feel like yours?" I smiled through tears, because some questions deserve beautiful answers. I kissed her forehead and said, "Because you are. Simple, true, final." Some women think blood makes family. Carol believed that. She was wrong, because the child I carried in my heart was never switched at all.